Some of these are very cool lines that I really wish did get released. But let's start looking at these action. But for this list, let's go over to the He-Man collection. Now, when I think He-Man, I think of the early 80s Mattel He-Man line. But this is from the 90s, the new adventure of He-Man, when they tried to reboot He-Man. Well, let's take a look at this figure. This figure was based on a character that was supposed to be He-Man's mentor. He was the leader of the Galactic Council. Whew, that sounds like something you would see in the prequels. Anyway, he decided to go back in time to Eternia to find He-Man. The figure was shown off in the 1989 Mattel catalog. However, due to changes in the story, Darius never made it into the He-Man show, and the planned character was retooled and renamed, so it was never released. The prototype did appear on eBay a few years ago, but then just disappeared off eBay, with no one knowing what happened, or even if it was sold. I never really got into that new He-Man line. It just didn't sit right with me. I was like, you don't reboot He-Man! And this was the 90s. I was moving on from He-Man. He-Man went through this phase, late 80s, early 90s, where people were like, He-Man, who likes that crap? And then people fell in love with it again. Late 90s and more into the 2000s, when we were starting to grow up and realize He-Man was pretty darn cool. So, what else is pretty darn cool? The Fifth Element. Well, I'll be honest with you, I don't really like the Fifth Element. I know a lot of you guys do. I like the first half of it. By the time Smokey comes into it, it just gets on my nerves too much. I just can't watch the movie anymore. Chris Tucker, I couldn't think of his name. I really like the first half of this movie, but once that character comes in, it's just too much. People complain about, the same people that hate Willie Scott have no problem with Chris Tucker in The Fifth Element. So, nah, I really don't like, I love Luc Besson. I love him as a director. Well, I say that, but I love The Professional, and I don't think I've loved anything else he's done since then, so maybe I can't say I love him as a director. But let's look at the Fifth Element figures that we didn't get. These Fifth Element figures were planned to be released by N2 Toys. In 2001, they showed off the toy line at Toy Fair, and they look really well done. The line was planned for a 2001 release, but was then pushed back to 2002. And at that same time, N2 Toys was having financial issues and would soon go out of business, leaving the figure line never released, and the prototypes had never been seen again. Now, one of the coolest sci-fi television shows in the 80s for me was V. The series really didn't last long, but V, if you were around when V came out, when they first did the miniseries, it was huge hype. This thing was huge. You thought the series would be a huge blast, but it just never really caught on. But I love V. I even got this shirt at junkmanmerch.com. Go check it out. Anyway, LGM planned to release V action figures. Not just action figures, but even vehicles and ships. Let's take a look. As I said, the made-for-television miniseries was a huge hit in the 80s. It even spawned a second miniseries and then a weekly television series. However, that TV series never really could find its footing and would even lose ratings with each episode. In 1985, LJN showed off their upcoming V action figure line, along with the vehicles. When the series was canceled, LJN pulled out from releasing the figures, with only a 12-inch action figure hitting the market. The figures and vehicles have not been seen since this photo in 1985. Those would have been awesome to have. Well, you remember Mr. T? Who didn't love Mr. T? And after the A-Team, did you know he had his own series? I didn't know that. It ran for 3 seasons, and it was called TNT. I didn't even know about this till today. I don't know how I missed 3 seasons of TNT, but apparently, yeah, I didn't even know Mr. T had his own show after the A-Team, and almost his own toy line. The show starred Mr. T as T.S. Turner. After being framed for a crime he didn't commit, kind of sounds like the A-Team, doesn't it? He teams up with Amy Taylor, his lawyer, and the two become private detectives to help others clear their name. Little is known about this planned toy line, very little. An image appears in the 1989 Galoob production catalog. Nothing from Galoob is ever spoken again about this toy line. However, the figure seen here may never have actually been made. Galoob had already released a 12-inch Mr. T action figure in 1983. This is most likely that same figure with new clothes. But the clothes, or the Mr. T wearing the clothes, have never been found. Now, by far one of the coolest science fiction movies of the 80s was Ice Pirates, but the second coolest might have been The Last Starfighter. Why didn't we get these? Why didn't we get these? In 1984, the film The Last Starfighter was released. It wasn't a hit like the studio hoped, but over the years it's become an 80s cult classic. When the film failed to do the box office that Galoob hoped, they pulled out. with fans only getting a hint of what might have been thanks to this Galoob catalog. There was a rumor that the prototypes were in the hands of a special effects artist that found religion and was selling off anything from his past. However, those rumors were quickly shot down as it was found out that those figures were custom made using MASH and other figures. Sadly, these prototypes from the Last Starfighter has never been found. Now, I know with the last few years we've gotten a lot of Freddy Krueger, Leatherface, Jason Voorhees. So, do we really need more? Well, we almost got a Series 5 of Cinema of Fear. Mezco was having a good success with their Cinema of Fear line, bringing horror movie heroes to the toy market. These were very well detailed 6-inch figures aimed to the collector. In 2010, they showed off their Series 5 line, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3, and a figure of Michael Myers in Ragged Hobo Jacket. Then, out of the blue, Series line was canceled, with no real explanation as to why, and the figures never got released. However, the Michael Myers and Ragged Hobo Jacket did appear on eBay, but then just disappeared. It's unknown what happened to it. I only put this on the list so I can say Ragged Hobo Jacket. I love saying it. Well, let's talk more slasher films. What if they made a water gun based on Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees? Yep, we almost got that. One thing kids love growing up is water guns, and the other is R-rated slasher films. Put them together and we almost had the Freddy Krueger and Jason water gun. The guns were shown off in the LJN production catalog in 1989. Freddy would fire water out of his claw hand, and Jason would swing down an axe to fire the water. The guns would have been made by Intertech, a subdivision of LJN, but that company has seen sales drop over the last 2 years after reports of kids being killed by cops while playing with water guns. And LJN would soon abandon their whole toy plans and focus more on video games.